My name's Paul Thomas, and this evening we're going to discuss 6 months into the Biden presidency. With me are Thaddeus Paul-Hamas, Judy Schickelgrover, and Dan Thomas. Hey, Dan. The term bipartisan now has many meanings. With the filibuster still a Senate rule, bipartisan is a way to explain the justification for obstructing any and every legislative proposal made by a Democrat. I also interpret it to mean giving the Republicans everything they want. Lately, I've been moving closer to the belief that bipartisan is a code word for white supremacy. An example is voting rights, which can't be considered bipartisan if no Republican supports it. Wasn't it the one of those voting rights acts, either John Lewis or For the People Act, that did not get past the filibuster because a single person, there was not a single Republican that voted to advance it to debate. That was just very recent. How do you define bipartisan at this moment, Thaddeus? You have a look on your face.
I have a look on my face, and I have a look in my head. I am trying very hard to hang on to the traditional meaning of bipartisanship, but I'm running out of fingernails. The bipartisanship that is still extant in the United States, and it is quite healthy, is the attitudes of the voters themselves. You know, we don't have bipartisanship in the Senate. We don't have very good bipartisanship in the House. So Capitol Hill is not a bipartisan place by and large. Yesterday's bill notwithstanding, we'll see how that goes because that wasn't the bill being voted on. But the bipartisanship is something that the people, the voters, the ordinary people want. And for the most part, the Republican Party is saying, to hell with you, we want our power, and not enough Democrats to balance that. So bipartisanship, maybe it's going to come back sometime in the future, but it's not really viable on Capitol Hill right now.
Not viable on Capitol Hill, Judy?
Well, I think he's right about that, but I had never thought about bipartisanship the way you're presenting it as a word for white supremacy. But the more I thought about it, the demand on the part of Manchin and the Republicans that things be done in a bipartisan way is a way to maintain the status quo, because nothing gets done. And the status quo in this country is that white people have the power generally and the control of things. So I think I guess I'm commenting on your comment, Paul, but I think that's an interesting definition. And, you know, they wouldn't say that, but how often do we hear them saying something like, we need to maintain our traditional values? And if you think about that, what traditional values are they talking about? So,
well, slavery was a traditional value for almost 100 right. years.
Yeah. And the idea that, well, except for the extremists, nobody wants to say, you know, that white power or anything like that. But if you start talking in terms of traditional values, that's just a code word in a way for the way things have always been done. And I guess the way I'd see what you said, Paul, is that demanding bipartisanship right now, the way things are, is just a way of defending the status quo which, as I just said, is pretty much white people in charge. And the status quo in this country has been that forever. So I found it an interesting definition or way of thinking about it, I guess. I agree with Paul, however, that in the country, except on the extreme fringes, I think there is a wish for the parties to get over themselves and to actually work together.
Yeah, well, that's a very good point. But the reason I used that as an example was whenever they had the vote on the For the People Act, the Voting Rights Act, they didn't get a single Republican on that. So therefore, I mean, they all voted no. Therefore, that bill couldn't be bipartisan. And that was really all about eliminating racially motivated voter suppression. Dan, what about bipartisanship?
Well, bipartisanship should mean that you are all working towards a similar goal. You just have different opinions on how to get there, and you are arguing from a shared set of facts. And don't storm the Capitol. That's what it should mean. But how it is being interpreted is very much about preserving the existing power structures. So if we can't get enough Republicans to cross the aisle and be on board, I guess we've tried absolutely nothing and we're all out of ideas. So we just leave everything sit the way it is, and it doesn't matter who it hurts or how our inaction stops it, causes more pain. Now, it is possible, I think, to have bipartisan goals be accomplished in certain situations, but they tend to be pet projects for people rather than party-wide, like For the People and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and the human infrastructure and fighting climate change. These are all Democratic ideas. Republicans do not like any of them. They don't want more people to be able to vote because if more people vote, then they won't win. They do not want climate change to be acknowledged as something we can do anything about, because if that happens, then they will start losing oil money, which is going to happen eventually. And I don't understand why they don't just see that. And I forget what the other one that I mentioned was, but you can get something through if you can manipulate it the right way. I listened to an interview with Senator Duckworth today, Tammy Duckworth, and she either is putting on the floor or has already gotten past a bill regarding breastfeeding and maternal health care. So it is either becoming law or it is already the law that airports have to have a space where women who are breastfeeding can breastfeed their children. And she got that through the hostile Senate by working her contacts with all the women in the Senate on both sides and contacting Republican doctors in every state that she needed to vote for, obstetricians to have them, pediatricians to have them call their Republican senators and reps to tell them how important it was for women to be able to breastfeed in the first year. And she got that through. So it can exist. Everyone had the same set of facts that they agreed on, that breastfeeding was important, and she was able to negotiate it. Now, I don't think that we're ever going to be bipartisan on things where one party has a vested interest in something not happening. So Joe and Kirsten can give up their beautiful dream of a single Republican crossing the lines to talk about voting rights. The Republicans have also forgotten that there was an angry mob on January 6th that was going to kill large numbers of them on both sides. Like all of Congress and the vice president were in danger. But now they're saying wonderful things about it. And they've made that psychopath Ashley Babbitt into some kind of hero. So we've deviated on the shared set of facts there. So we can't be bipartisan on that issue, even if we do have Republicans on the committee investigating it, because the majority of the Republicans have given up on what actually happened.
You're talking about the majority of congressional Republicans, unlike what Judy said, that the people, the people in the homes of America are essentially bipartisan. It's just the people in the elected officials, which are not bipartisan.
Have you talked to any Republicans lately? Do you think many of the voters at home actually believe that Joe Biden is president?
Well,
Well,
there are a large number that don't, I agree. But, you know, when you look at the statistics, I don't know what the percentage of Republicans who do not agree that Biden is, I can't ever remember numbers, but then you need to look at the percentage of people who are actually Republicans. So when you have a percentage of a small percentage of the electorate, you know, I take comfort in that there are more Democrats and independents in this country than Republicans. And I guess I was thinking, I agree with you, I can't talk to Republicans. But I think there are people who may not, there are a lot of people, I think, who would really appreciate our government actually trying to get something done for the good of the country instead of just trying to maintain their own positions.
speaking of one of the few things that have gotten done, Juneteenth was recently written into law as a national holiday. My cynical nature has led me to the belief that it is simply a strategy to create a talking point for Republicans that there are really for Black people in order to divert attention from Jim Crow 2 voter suppression laws rapidly passing in many state legislatures. How significant do you consider Juneteenth national holiday in the law in terms of it being a Biden administration achievement as well as a symbolic victory against white supremacy? Dan, is this a big deal?
It is a big deal because we should never underestimate the importance of symbols. Every gay person knows what Stonewall is, even if it was actually much seedier and grosser than we ever want to give it credit for. Symbols are very, very important. It doesn't actually do anything to address the systemic racism and abuse, but it is a start. Now, I don't think that the African American community is going to be fooled by Republicans saying, yes, you can have this holiday. Now you have two. You have this and Martin Luther King Day. So that should be all you need, and you're equal to the rest of us. And the fact that you have no generational wealth because we made damn sure that you couldn't get loans or houses or anything else for many, many years, that's got nothing to do with it. All is better. What reparations? But I don't think the African American community is going to be fooled by that tactic any more than the LGBTQIA community was fooled by Donald Trump not expressing specific hatred for gay people, particularly not for gay men. But you're always going to have some member of every marginalized group who is doing well under the current status quo. So you will have your African American Republicans. Those people are already there. Those people did well under the last administration. They saw their personal gain going up. They were okay with it. They went with it. Every group has people like this. There were Asian people who did well, even in the last year with the rising tide of Asian hate crimes. You have Caitlyn Jenner, who is still a Republican for for reasons. I don't want to pretend to get into what they are, but I'm assuming she's just a stupid human being. But you will have traitors in the ranks. And I use the word traitor specifically in reference to Caitlyn. I think that you will wind up seeing people who do take that tactic. And I think the majority of marginalized people are going to say, well, that's some bullshit and I don't buy it. But I do think it is a largely symbolic victory. And unless we do things to redress the redlining and undo the housing discrimination and the educational disparities, and I don't know, maybe say we're sorry for kidnapping you from your home country 400 years ago and dragging you over here against your will and separating you from your families. Maybe once we start with those things, then it can go a little further. But right now, Juneteenth is really, I think, just a symbol.
The power of the symbol, Judy. How significant is Juneteenth in your mind?
Well, I agree with Dan that symbols are very important. I think narratives, the story that we all believe, is very important. I also think, Paul, that you may be a person more cynical than I am. Which, is...
Thanks for the compliment.
Yeah, well, it's quite a feat, really. But yeah, I agree with what Dan said, that not much substance, but a symbol, and symbols are important, I think. And they may lead, little kids, little Black kids realizing that there's a Juneteenth day, may grow up feeling better about themselves. Who knows?
How important is the symbol, Thad?
A long time ago, I believe it was Will Rogers said of President Coolidge that old silent Cal don't talk much, but when he does, he don't say much. And that is what Juneteenth says to me. It is a symbol. It's important to have a symbol. I was thinking not so much of Caitlyn Jenner as Michael Steele when Dan was talking about that issue. Michael Steele, of course, was chairman of the Republican Party, and he's a African American from Maryland, so we know him pretty well around here. And symbols are important. I think that probably a better symbol for inspiring African Americans would be the fact that Barack Obama was president for 8 years. And he was actually really elected with, pluralities both times. But anyway, we have been, our nation, our society has been wounded by the racial inequality. And it came to a head in 1861 to 1865. And the people who perpetrated the traitorous acts in those years were allowed to go free afterwards. And I blame that fact on the fact that a century and a half later, the United States has not healed and has not made peace with the people that we brought over here to enslave. So we have a long, long way to go. It's a nice symbol. It's a nice little feel-good thing to say. In the retail community, of course, is delighted to have another federal holiday for people to come and shop.
I'm really looking forward to 10% off mattresses next June.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Judy, Dan, Thaddeus. We had a great discussion.